Growing up in Asia, you're taught to be very humble, be modest, blend in. But then, like working in the US, you really learn, actually, you have to be vocal.
Right.
You have to advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for your team. And my manager's like, no, you need to show off the things that you did do well. It's really uncomfortable, but it's important. And I think we should all, embrace our strength and the things that we do well and lean into it a little bit more.
So this is Jen, ex-Facebook, ex-Google, a mother of two, and American-born Taiwanese, and moved to Singapore.
Where are you from is generally a very common question. As you first meet someone, you usually ask for their name, where are you from? For me, the where are you from question, even though it's such a simple one, I always have a very long answer. To your point, I was born in the States, but I grew up in Taiwan, and I went to an international school, and I've moved around a whole bunch, and I married a Malaysian. So, definitely a very multi-racial, multi-background, and the short answer is I identify as a third culture kid. So not a single culture, but a third culture. And I quite embrace that because I feel like that makes me, more international and have ways to connect with different cultures. And I'm so happy to be here in Bangkok, in Thailand. It's the first time to be back in Bangkok since I was a little kid. So it's really nice to see how much the city has grown. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So for the background knowledge, Jen and I have been knowing each other since 2013 at Kellogg School of Management.
2012.
Probably 2013 through your husband.
That's right. I started 2012.
Yeah. And then, so Jen worked at Google prior to Kellogg. Can you share with us a little bit more about the most desirable employers?
So I was at Google from 2007 to 2012. So 5 years. It was at that time, it didn't feel like that early in the process of a company because it had already gone IPO. But now, 10 years later, I'm like, wow, what, it's been just a very long time since I was there. And I remember, it was my first job out of college. And I remember just being in college and, being very anxious senior year, trying to apply to jobs. And I was searching on Google for, good companies to work for. And I was like, maybe I should just try applying to Google. And I had no idea that it was difficult to get in. I have no idea what the process was like. I kind of just submitted my application and forgot about it. And then when I got a call back to do the interview process, I was also like, oh yeah, I'll just do the interview. And it wasn't until my friends were telling me, oh my God, it's so
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. You need to work for this. And I was like, oh, okay. I really need to prepare myself. But, I think the story here is sometimes you just have to, your fear is the one that stops you from trying things.
Right.
Because I have no idea. So then I was just like, I'll apply. I didn't give it too much thought, so then I could really be myself. And it was a wonderful experience.
And it was at headquarters, right?
Yes, it was in the headquarters in Mountain View, California.
So at that time, what was your major and what function did you join?
I joined the sales organization, but it's really funny, and I think this is something that's really special about Google and a lot of the tech companies at that stage is that for me, they actually hired a bunch of us as generalists. So
similar to consultant kind of?
Yes and no. I mean, we were fresh out of college and we were all being hired into what was called the online sales organization, which had many, many, many different departments. And depending on my start date, I could have been assigned to a different group or a different department. So they really look for people that and we all came from different majors. I was a psych and international studies major, so nothing to do with business, nothing to do with selling, nothing to do with advertising, which was what I was doing, the main product for Google. But it was more, they look for characteristics of people who are more adaptable, who can learn, and generalists. Because again, we're so new to the workforce, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity because it's really taught me a lot about working in larger organizations, working cross-functionally. It's also given me lots of opportunities to just meet wonderful people, and then I think I owe where I am today for Google, to the first job.
And do you think Google has changed a lot since that time?
I can't really, to be honest, I can't answer that because it's been more than 10 years since I've left. Just by the pure size of it, right? It's changed a lot. The name of the company has changed. It was Google when it was there, now it's Alphabet, right? So I think in many ways that it's changed. Funny enough, my husband actually worked at Google a few
recently
years. Quite in the last 5 years. And so sometimes we compare notes. I think at the heart of it, it's still the same, of putting customers or users at the center of the decision, and then everything else will follow. The perks are still good. The food is still wonderful. They still hire really great people. But I think, of course, as the organization grows, like it's different challenges. And then maybe back then, I knew almost everyone in my building. And then I did an assignment in Singapore. I knew everyone, the whole company in Singapore at that time. But right now, there's no way. Just the size of it is so different.
It becomes more corporate. At that time that you joined, it might be like a big startup. Recently, IPO.
Pure size of it is so different.
So what about Facebook? Facebook has already become large at the time that you joined, right?
So I joined Facebook. So context is, I joined Facebook actually in their Singapore headquarters. So at that time, the Singapore headquarters wasn't that big yet. We were maybe around 300 people.
300?
Which sounds like a lot, but it's actually not.
You cannot get to know everyone for like 300 people.
No, but I feel like we actually knew, or even if you don't know everyone, you know like people's face. It's like going to school. You might not know everyone, but you know people's face. Like Kellogg, our class is maybe 800 people per class.
I couldn't remember.
But our section, you would know of the people, each other.
That's like in the same class, right?
Yeah.
So like in the same department, of course you know each other, but like not everyone.
I think in the building you probably would know of each other, the face. Like it's small enough, and it was a really exciting time. So I joined as the first person for my department, actually, for my team in APAC. So it was really exciting. I actually was the one. So backtrack a little bit. I applied when I was applying to business school, my essay was about how I wanted to move to Asia. And because I feel like there's so much happening in this part of the world. And a lot of people ask me, including my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, like, why do you want to move to Asia? Everyone has the American dream. Let's move to the States and stay there. And then I was just like, no, like I did an assignment with Google in Singapore, and I love just the diversity of the Asia Pacific region. I love the fast pace of things. It's just such an exciting time. Like we're really solving problems here, and inventing new things. Like a lot of things that you might take for granted in the States, like here will be a big barrier or a big challenge. And there's just so much opportunity, and I was drawn to the pace here. So I actually made a very conscious effort to move to Asia, wanting to experience that and be part of this.
So what you expect and what is the reality? Is it like different, or is it as dynamic as you thought?
Yes, I would say so. It's a lot more challenging than I thought.
Okay.
Like of course, like when I came here for my assignment, it was a 3 month thing. So I was like traveling around like every weekend, different country, and it was just really exciting. And then now that I've lived in Singapore or lived in Asia for 10 years. I would say it's a mix. Like I still find it to be really exciting. Like I love how much diversity there is in the region, so I can never get bored of it. I also think it's very challenging. It can be very challenging because of how different it is. There's not a one size fits all solution. I've worked for multinational corporates for the last 10 years. Most of them headquartered in the States, and then with an APAC headquarter. And when I work, a lot of times our U.S. headquarter or the main headquarter will ask like, how are things going in Asia? And I'm like, well, which part of Asia? Because it's so different and so diverse. So you're really solving different challenges and problems depending on what you're trying to focus on.
So what about the work culture between Facebook and Google? Is there any difference or similarities?
I think culture is always different company to company, even across the different tech companies. Facebook at the time, again, now it's Meta. So yeah. And I was always at Facebook when it was Facebook. Facebook at the time was really about growing fast. So one of the models,
move fast and break things.
Move fast and break things. So when I joined, it was move fast and break things, and then I think a year in, it was like, okay, we'll move fast, but try not to break things. I think it was really exciting because, like I said, the Singapore office or the APAC office was still quite new, and my department was brand new. So it was a lot of like you get to try different things, like test out, build new processes. I came in, I was like, well, I can make decisions like this, like so big of a decision, and I could just make it, and you can really see your direct impact. And I think it also has to do with the fact that I was in the APAC office, so it's much smaller, the teams are smaller, so you really do move fast. It was really good because you have the global resources and processes, but you get to be very nimble on the ground, which was wonderful.
At the time, were you marketing?
I was in marketing, I was in marketing for the non-ads side of the business.
Okay. So you get to work with a lot of Thai people or like other nationalities?
Yeah, I did get to. I had Thai colleagues. I had colleagues from all across the Asia region. Yeah.
So sounds like the experience depends on the stage of the company more than the company themselves.
I think it's a mix. The stage of the company, where you're based, I think headquarters versus the regional offices are also different because the pure size of it is different. Yeah.
Okay, and what is the challenge of like being a working mother of 2 children, and you moved from the US to Taiwan and to Singapore?
Yeah, so there was a lot of moving around because we moved to Taiwan during COVID, not intentionally, but just ended up happening that way. To many of us during COVID, I think you just can't plan. But being a working mom, I actually think that having kids make me a better worker, I think it makes me a lot more efficient.
Because you need to, you're forced to be efficient.
You're forced to be efficient, but also I realize time is so precious. So, like I'm a lot more intentional in terms of where I spend my time on. And work-wise too, like I wanna do things that, if it's time away from kids, it better be worth it.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's job or something else. So you really learn to be more efficient, more effective, and more intentional in choosing your career too. Yeah. And I also think that in many ways, working, I don't think I can ever be a full-time mom, as working gives me so much passion and purpose, and in a way that work is a break from the kids.
It's like work is a holiday itself because it's a break from
it's a break from the kids, but then also kids, like having kids is a break from work too.
Yeah.
So they recharge me. Yeah, they both recharge me.
That's great. So what about the transitioning part? Like you moved from the US to Taiwan, to Singapore, but you grew up in Taiwan.
I grew up in Taiwan.
So at what age?
I moved to Taiwan when I was pretty young. So like by elementary school, I was there from, all the way till college. So high school and then college, I was back in the States. Yeah.
And you worked in the States, and then you worked in Singapore, and then you moved to Taiwan and moved back to Singapore. So what is the difference between working environment in the US and in Taiwan and in Singapore? Can you compare these three?
Yeah, so I mean, working in the US, it's very, because it's the headquarters, so a lot of decisions were made there. You're closer to the decisions. You like, of course, you have like bigger offices, all of that.
Nicer perks?
Perks are all pretty standard. I think I learned a lot. Like growing up in Asia, even though I went to an international school and all of that, I think there's still a lot of Asian culture where you're taught to be very humble. Don't brag about anything.
Like be very soft spoken a little bit.
Yeah, and be modest. Like blend in like everyone else.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the nail that sticks out. But then, like working in the US, you really learn, actually you have to be vocal. Right. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for your team. If you lead a team, you have to. I remember there was performance review, right? Like every quarter or every 6 months, and you need to write about your accomplishments. Like you need to raise your hand for the opportunities. So in the beginning, it was hard for me to do it because I'm like, oh no, like I'm here to talk about like the things I didn't do so well, and then my manager's like, no, you need to like show off the things that you did do well, and I was like, okay, it's really hard for me. It's really
like
uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable, but it's important, and I think we should all embrace our strength and the things that we do well and lean into it a little bit more.
Like being an Asian woman in the US companies, it's like like you need to bring yourself and like make it stand out instead of like blending in, but your culture taught you to blend in, and then you moved to Taiwan.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't work in Taiwan for very long, and a lot of my time in Taiwan was doing my own thing. So I can't comment too much about working in a Taiwanese company per se, but I would say like a lot of like it's a little bit more homogenous. Of course, working in Chinese, like different working model. Working in Singapore, I would say it's really diverse. It's like a big cultural melting pot because Singapore being, for a lot of companies, the APAC headquarter, then you have people from all around the world. I mean, obviously
Not just Asia.
Not just Asia. Of course, there's a lot of like Southeast Asian and a lot of local Singaporeans, but there's also like people from Europe, from the US, from everywhere. And I just love how it's like a mini UN in the office. And like,
mini UN.
Yeah, and then you also hear like different like languages in the office. It's just really exciting. Yeah.
Okay, so in Singapore, there's no culture shock because it's similar to the US in terms of diversity.
Yeah, I would say the U.S. diversity it's more different. Like you don't see as many people with, at least where I was, like you don't see as many people with they're maybe from different part of the U.S. and maybe some could be immigrants, of course. But I think in Singapore there's a lot of expats that may just be come and go. Some have come for many years. Some are here just more temporarily or on an assignment, so it's more in and out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about growing up in Taiwan, raising kids in Singapore? Do you see the differences?
I think it again plays into the cultural diversity, and also of course the time, right? Like growing up in Taiwan in the 80s and the 90s, like it's more, I mean, Taiwan is a very like Confucian based like country, so a lot of like respect your elders, like here are the rules. I love traditions, like I'm here celebrating Chinese New Year.
As you can see from the
Chinese
costume.
New Year. Yeah, so it's a lot of that, and I love the history. I love the tradition, and being able to pass that down to the kids. Being in Singapore, it's a lot more international. Even the language itself, right? Like 4 official languages in Singapore. My kids go to local school, and they're taught minimally 2 languages in school, and it's also reflected in the food. I'm a big foodie, love to eat. My kids love to eat. You witness some of that. It's also reflected in the food. I always say, it feels like nothing is from Singapore, but everything is local.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, nothing is local, but everything is local, and that makes it so interesting.
Diversity.
So,
tell us about teaching your kids to be bilingual, like you speak Chinese Mandarin to the kids, and then your husband speaks English to the kids.
I would say it's half intentional and half out of necessity too, because my husband, he actually doesn't speak much Chinese. And to me, tradition is very important. And a lot of that tradition is through language. So early on in our relationship, even before we had kids, it was always, I said it to my husband, and he agrees too. It's important for us to pass down the culture and pass down the language. So I speak to my kids only in Mandarin, and my husband, because he can speak Mandarin, so he speaks to the kids only in English. So I think it's really, the kids are smart. So
they pick up language faster than adults.
Yeah, they do, and it's really interesting to see them just like code switch like that. They'll turn around, and it's ever since they were babies too. Like they'll turn around, speak to me in Chinese, and then they'll speak to my husband in English. And now that they're older, of course, it's easier if we just all speak English at home, but I made it really a point to only speak Chinese to the kids. And in fact, if they speak English to me, I said, I can't understand. I don't understand. You have to speak Chinese
that
to me.
Hardcore.
Because, otherwise you lose it. And you lose the language, you lose a lot of the culture too. And I feel like the gift of language and culture is the biggest gift that I can give to my kids.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty sharp. Okay. So what about so why did you become part-time life coach?
it's pretty interesting. So my husband was actually the one who became a life coach first, or was exposed to life coaching first, and he's been telling me for years that I should, look into life coaching. I've had a decent career working at, very lucky to be working at some
tech
of the
giants,
biggest tech companies, and I've done well, but sometimes when you're in the motion, you lose sight of everything else happening in your life. And there were times that I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just working so hard, I'm moving so fast, I'm just you're like a hamster in the wheel all the time. You're just working, and then my husband's like, hey, you should look into life coaching, because sometimes I ask him, and this was years ago, and I asked him, I was like, yeah, I actually don't know what my values are, or what's the purpose. I know I like doing what I'm doing, I enjoy the companies, and so much of my identity is tied to work, but I don't know what else is there. And it's also being in your 30s and 40s, like midlife kind of thing. I was like,
kind of.
So searching. And then COVID happened, and it kind of forced, it's such a big event. It just puts everything into perspective and kind of forces you to pause
and rethink about your life
and slow down and rethink about life. And my husband's like, I really think you should look into life coaching. And he also offered to pay for my class. I was like, okay, well, I will try one and see. But I tried it, and since the fundamental course, I was like, oh, wow, it's really helped me things from a different perspective. It's given clearer purpose. And the thing about life coaching is the coach doesn't give you the answer. They ask lots of questions and make you think of your own answer, because I can tell you what to do. What's right for me is not what's right for you. So but during the course of the training, which was hundreds of hours, it actually helped me learn a lot more about myself and being more grounded in my values, and it makes the difficult decisions a lot easier to make, because when you're so clear on your values, when you're so clear on the purpose, it just makes all the decisions very easy. And I wanted to be able to do that for other people too, to be able to help other people, especially women, actually, because I feel like in many ways, women we talk about this, we don't raise our hand, we advocate for other people, whether it's at work. You see lots of real estate agents being women, we're negotiating for other people. But when it comes to negotiating for ourselves, we don't do it. We don't do it. When it comes to, paying for ourselves to do something, we also don't do it. So I really wanted to help more women too. So a lot of my clients are women as well.
Oh, so I'm being a devil advocate here. So I'm not sure whether we can ask ourselves instead of paying the life coach to ask us the same questions or not. What is the difference between asking ourselves and having somebody asking the same questions?
No, I think you can totally ask yourself the same question. I think with the life coach, of course, it's just more clarity. And I think the coach sometimes serves in many different purposes. It's they serve as a mirror to point out things hey, you're saying it this way. You just did that with your face. What does that mean? Sometimes you don't see it right away. And then they ask you sharp questions that sometimes deep down inside, but you're not willing to ask yourself. But of course, that's not to say you need a coach. I think no one really have to have a coach. Think of it as playing a sport or going to the gym. Do you need a personal trainer to train, to exercise?
Probably not.
You don't. But lots of people get one. I have one. You get one because you want someone professional to help you. or you want someone to be there to be your champion, to help you through the course. But it's a very personal choice. So I definitely don't think everyone needs a life coach. I think it depends on where you are, what you're trying to achieve, what kind of person you are. I also don't think life coaching is for everyone. I always tell my clients, you get as much out of it as you put in.
Oh.
So if you go into it thinking, I don't believe in it, or I'm too busy for this, I'm just going to talk to someone, but I won't do any of the work afterwards, then nothing's going to happen. Most of the transformation, most of the work happens outside of the conversation in the sessions. The sessions are more just to spark, to get you thinking like, oh yeah, that's right, I do that, and get you to commit. Okay, I'm going to from now on try this thing out. But if you don't do it outside of the coaching sessions, then
so the session is meant for self-awareness, and then the client has to work on themselves in order to improve.
I would say depending on the goal of the client. So yes, sometimes it's self-awareness. Sometimes the client will come with very specific challenge that they're dealing with. Then we talk through like potential solutions that they want to try out. Sometimes it's about, a lot of times the client come and say, I feel stuck.
Yeah.
So it's to help them see different perspectives.
So is there any suggestions if an audience is listening and feels stuck as well? Especially women in the working world, in the corporate, and after being a mother, sometimes women stop getting promoted just because they have to raise kids, but like husband has to raise kids as well. I don't know why the same effect doesn't work.
Well, that's a really good question. It's also a very big question. I think, well, first of all, I'll say this, and you probably hear this over and over again. It's so important to choose the right partner.
Okay.
Like, I am very grateful for my husband. I think he really is the reason why, he's a big part of why I'm able to have the career that I have, and to have like 2 kids. Like, he is as hands-on, if not more hands-on than I am. So I think finding another half. So this is like my advice to young women is always like, find a partner that is truly a partner, is an equal, that will be supportive of you as much as you are supportive of him. I think that's
the number one goal, right?
That's so important. Finding someone who can be your champion, who will be your champion, as much as the other way around.
So what if it doesn't work that way already? I mean, like, somebody might have a husband who wants the wife to support the husband instead, but like, then she feels stuck at work and she's career oriented. What would she do?
Again, I think it's a personal question. So depending on the situation and scenario, the answer might be different. And we talked about this, right? The coach doesn't give the answer. The coach will give the prompt. So I mean, what I would ask the client is like, what's important to her? What does she actually want out of life? And also try to visualize, what does that, where is life? And I think life is very generic. So I would actually suggest like, look at different part of your life. Like, we're a full person, right? So look at career, look at health, look at relationship, look at money, look at leisure, look at all aspects of life, and ask yourself, like, where am I in each aspect of my life? And also stack rank them. What's important to me in this stage of my life? Because we're a full person, we're a whole person. A lot of times the clients come and they say like, oh, I'm stuck on this one piece. Then we start talking and then we realize, actually,
that's not the priority after all.
Yeah, you're not stuck on that piece. You're actually stuck on something else. A lot of times they come to me wanting to talk about career, but it ended up having to do with something that's happening at home or happening with like parents, for example. So don't be so hyper focused on the one thing, but really taking a step back and evaluate the whole picture. And I talk about values a lot, right? Like being clear on what your values are, what's important to you as a person. What are things that are non-negotiable for you, and what are things that are actually I don't care that much. And you realize maybe I'm spending too much time on the things I don't care about,
right?
And then not spending enough time on the things that I care about, and that's why I feel stuck. So then how do you then reprioritize, and what changes would you make?
Actually, in the first episode with Professor Harry Kramer, did you take his class? Managerial leadership?
I took some workshops.
Yeah. So the gist of the managerial leadership is to have self-reflection and then have a balanced perspective. So it's similar to what you've just said. So he asked us to do self-reflection weekly for 10 times. And then I realized what my values were and are still there. And then we need to have a balanced perspective that our point of view might not be the only reality. And then we have to take, I do not remember what does it called, but we have to take a look at so many pillars of our lives. So not just career, not just family, not just money, but also have health, spiritual, and social contribution. So sometimes when you feel stuck, you focus only on one aspect of life, even though you have many other things in life as well. So that's probably something to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what about mentorship? I heard that a lot of tech giants have mentorship program. Do you think mentorship and life coaching are replaceable or not?
No, they're very different. Like I said, the life coach doesn't tell you what to do. So I wouldn't say a life coach is a mentor. In fact, when talking to my clients, I don't tell them anything about myself in terms of I work for a tech company, any of that.
You don't share personal experience at all?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not about me. It's about the clients. It's always about the client. It's not about me and me putting my experience on you. Unless the client says, okay, I really need your advice on something, that I say, okay, then I'm going to put down my life coaching hat and put on mentoring hat. So that's a possibility, but it's something that you design with your client. And I think mentorship, really you're there, you're looking for maybe practical advice from your mentor. A lot of times you look for mentors that have a shared experience or in a shared industry, etc. So it's something that's a lot more specific, and you're trying to gain from your mentor's experience versus a life coach. It's not. Yeah.
So what works in mentorship that doesn't work in life coaching? I mean, what are the challenges that the client has to go through in order to need life coach or in order to need a mentor?
I don't think one is a replacement for another, and I don't think it's a mutually exclusive thing. So it's not I will pick this and not that. I think you should have both. You can have both, and you should. And going to a life coach also doesn't mean that you have any problem. There's nothing wrong with you. In fact, it's more hey, I have a goal. I want to go there, and I want a coach to help me get there. A lot of times, that's the premise of it. And then mentors are, again, sometimes mentors are shorter term and say there's a short-term mentorship program, and sometimes there are mentors that are lifelong. And I have many mentors. There are people that I go to for certain challenges and questions, and there are others that I go to for other questions. So I think it's not always so structured. It doesn't have to be and shouldn't be so structured either.
Okay, so can you wear a mentor hat for for a while and then rethink about the suggestions again if you want to give junior people, probably like recent Kellogg graduates, like what they should do about their lives in order to be fulfilled eventually, not like running forward, but it's actually in a hamster wheel.
So for recent MBA grads, is that a problem? Like MBA grad, so they've already had a few years of working experience?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, so with that, I think I would say don't. It's a good question. And I know you said wear my mentor hat, but it's gonna sound similar to my coaching answer. I would say, yeah, be clear on what your values are. What's important to you. Initially I was gonna say like don't chase the money and don't chase the title necessarily, but
depends on what you want.
Depends on what you want, and maybe that's really important to you, and like then go for it. But it's being very clear on what it is that you want, and I think being clear on, okay, well, this is my long-term goal, and then so let's backtrack. Like, if this is where I want to get to in 10 years, then this is what I need to do in 5 years and 2 years and 1 year. So this is like my next job. This is important, like really pave the way to get there, but also be flexible. Like don't lose sight of, okay, that's the North Star, but there are many, many, many different ways to get there. Something dramatic could happen like COVID. Then your plan gets thrown around, like lots of surprises, but being open to embracing those surprises and knowing that there'll be different ways to get there.
And actually you need to know what is really important in life, because if you chase that, if you pursue that, you have to sacrifice many other things as well, right?
Yeah, and life is all about trade-offs. And I tell my daughter this all the time, because sometimes she'll be like, but I want this and I want that. And I said, well, pick one, because you can't have both. And then she says, okay, I'll pick this. And then she's like, like sad all day. She's like, oh, but I didn't get that. And I'm like, but you should think about how you got this one. And you should want it badly enough that it actually makes you happy that you have this one. Life is all about trade-offs, and that's why I say trade-offs is kind of like values, right? Like when you're so grounded in the values, the trade-offs become very easy, because well, that's way more important than the other thing.
Is it possible to change your North Star if the situation changes, or?
Yeah, I think it's possible to change where you want to go at the end. Like I said, you have to be flexible, right? And things happen. I do think people's values stay quite consistent throughout life, but the goal may change, right? Like for me, I never had kids really in my blueprint. I was open to the possibility, but it wasn't like growing up like I really want this many kids. It was like, okay, well, I know I'm open to the idea of having kids. Like, oh, it seems like it would be good, but if I don't end up having any kids, it wouldn't be like, but now that I do have kids, I adore and I love my children. So now it changes a lot of things for me too, right?
So you're not a woman who thought about having a perfect life meaning having family with 2 kids and a small house and whatever like that, but you're a career focused woman, and then you happens to have kids, like not like happens to have, but still like being flexible in your own plan and willing to change some directions in order to serve what changes.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on like different stage in life, right? Like you ask me in my 20s, do I want to have kids? I'll be like, I don't know. I'm open to the possibility, but I don't know what I don't know either.
Okay.
So I think it depends on just different stage. I am a planner, So there are things that are easier to plan. There are things that are harder to plan. I remember being in school, I would plan out like, these are the courses that I want to take, for the rest of high school. And then at Kellogg, I'm like, these are the courses I want to take in the next 2 years. So those are things that, in a way, it's easier to plan out. But I suppose this is one piece of advice too, is to be more flexible, to be open to opportunities and possibilities. Like for me, because I was such a planner growing up, like having structure, like planning out my curriculum and all of that, like looking back, if I were to give my teen and 20-year-old something advice, is just be a bit more open, try new things, explore new things. Life is too short to be just follow a blueprint.
Okay, so can I conclude your advice? The first one is that knowing your values. If you know what important to you, then everything else will be easier. It's going to be easy to sacrifice something because trade-off is like obvious when you know what is important. And the second one is you keep your flexibility, because if you are not flexible enough, then you cannot take new opportunities that comes in your way.
Yeah, you might miss out on great opportunities.
And third one, know when you need a life coach or a mentor, or both. If you are pursuing a goal and you're not sure how to get there, then having other people's advice might help. But if you are not sure about that, then first ask yourself questions. Do the self-reflection in order to, of course, get to know your values.
Yeah. And as Asians, we should be more vocal and advocate for ourselves too.
Yeah, don't be scared to advocate for yourself, because someone else will not do that for you.
Yeah.
And if you like this type of content, please click like and subscribe to our channel. And thank you so much, Chen.
Thank you for having me.
Interviewing today, and hopefully we will see each other soon.
Yes, of course.
Yay.
Take care.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.